In fact, I've got my producer, Kevin, begging me to ask a follow-up question on that, so I'm going to let him tag in for just a second because he's a very spiritual man himself. Kevin, go ahead and ask your question for Nikita.
Come on, Kevin.
What led you to becoming a born-again Christian in 93 and then later on deciding to go ahead and transition into ministry?
Yeah, great. It's a great question, and again, when I left wrestling, man, I was empty. Here I had this, this whole, successful career, and certainly in the moment, wrestling in front of 20, 30, 40,000 people and winning championship belts, it's exhilarating. I'm not going to lie and say it's not. It was very exhilarating. People chanting your name for 10 minutes in an arena across the world, and et cetera. But at the end of the day, at the end of the night, when the cheers stopped and the next day came, you had to look for the next thrill or the next cheer. And so for me, it was just coming to that realization in 1993, walking away by my choice from that wrestling career, moving forward, that there had to be something more. And the more for me was when I found myself at an altar, 17 October 1993, surrendering my heart to Christ, and instantly, and nobody will know this until they experience it for themselves, but instantly, and it sounds like, Kevin, you have, so you'll know what I'm talking about, my heart was filled. I all of a sudden I had fulfillment to my life. And then moving forward from there, I didn't just launch into ministry. I was discipled for a period of about really 5 years there. Discipled and mentored and went on mission trips and learned to serve people and build churches and Bible schools around the world. And then in 1998, at the September of 98, doors of opportunity just really honestly just opened up, not of any of my doing, and the phone began to ring and people began to contact me and want me to come and share my story. And now here I am years later, having ministered in, like I say, over 25 different countries and thousands and thousands of churches and schools and audiences. It's been an amazing journey, Kevin.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember if I absolutely read this for sure. I may have read this out of your book, Wrestling with Success, which was published in 2004. Am I remembering correctly that Ted DiBiase at one time was mentoring you along that path?
Well, Ted was one of the forerunners of wrestlers who surrendered his life, and so we certainly became friends through that kindred spirit of serving Christ, and so we became good friends through that, and so he certainly contributed to my growth as a believer in Christ, and definitely would give him some credit for being a contributor in that. Yes.
Well, and it seems there's a definite path for a lot of wrestlers coming out of the 80s and 90s going that direction as well. We've seen it with Sting and the Road Warriors and a bunch of the greats of the 80s and 90s. And I even, there was a chance to meet Hawk Animal with Sting a few years ago, and I missed out on that. And sadly, Hawk is no longer with us. But have you ever been on those ministry tours with Sting?
Steve and I have tagged up, him and I and Ted actually. In fact, we did with the largest audience. We actually did a human drama, what we would call a human drama illustration of Steve's life for a crowd of over 44,000 teenagers in Indianapolis just a few years back. And then Ted and I have tagged up individually or together at times. And Steve and Lex, having given April 23rd, 2006, he surrendered his heart to the Lord. And so he and I have tagged up a lot of times. And Uncle Ivan, I was fortunate to have an opportunity or a role in Ivan's salvation in 1995. I invited him actually to a revival where I was with the evangelist that I was being mentored by, and Ivan came to the altar, and his life's never been the same. And so we've had opportunities with guys. And you know what, guys? Here's what I would conclude: that a lot of times, the world says, hey, be successful, make all this money, do all these things, and you're going to be so happy. Well, you know what? We did all that, myself and Lex and Sting and Ted and the Road Warriors and so we were there. You might say we did that, bought that T-shirt, and at the end of the day, we're like, man, we're still empty. And each one of them has, in their own time, come to the conclusion that what was missing in their life was that spiritual part of their life, that relationship with Jesus Christ, and that's why you've seen a lot of the guys from that era coming to know Christ, and then some of them kind of involved in the ministry. Ivan's an ordained minister,
That's fantastic. And I hope that a lot of today's wrestlers who are caught up in the lifestyle will hopefully not only glean from your experience, but maybe they can find some inner peace themselves, because it seems the temptations, and you know about this in the business, there's always somebody that wants to party. There's always somebody that wants to give you something free. It's very easy to get caught up in a hedonistic lifestyle so quickly in the wrestling business and go down a dark path.
Yeah, absolutely. You are spot on, because if you think about it, we've had well over 100 wrestlers who unfortunately took that path, and it's led to what I would determine premature death. I mean, many of them go online and in their 32, 33, 34, in their 20s and in their 40s, Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, Ravishing Rick Rude, and the list goes on of the tragedy within the world of wrestling. And so, believe me when I say that Steve, Sting, Ted, myself, Lex, and others feel very, very fortunate that we saw the light and didn't succumb to that dark path and find ourselves another statistic along the way. So we feel very blessed and fortunate of that.
Well, I can say with all sincerity, amen to that, because I'm glad you didn't end up on that path, and we hope that more wrestlers don't end up on that path as well. But before we wrap it up, I think producer Kevin wants to ask you a couple of NWA-related questions, so I'm going to toss to him really quick for that. Kevin, please go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, just a couple throwback questions from your career. You mentioned earlier that you made a conscious decision to not sign a contract with World Wrestling Federation and go up there. Of the many accomplishments that you did have during your times with NWA and later WCW and even in the AWA, you didn't really get many opportunities to challenge for the heavyweight title, and you never had a big singles heavyweight title run with any of those promotions. Was there any particular reason why?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, actually, early in my career, 13 months into the business, at that point I was the world six-man champion, the world tag team champion, and we had the big push for the world title with the very first ever Great American Bash against Ric Flair, which led to actually, and of course, obviously, we weren't at that time on cable television, but he and I had a long program together, both as with me on the dark side, you might say, as the bad guy, and then once I did the switch and teamed with Dusty, once again, Rick and I had numerous encounters for the World Heavyweight title. Never put the title around my waist. There was a time there where I took a sabbatical with my wife that had passed away with cancer. Took that sabbatical and was touted to come back. And actually, Rick had the book at the time. He was booker at the time, and a very little known fact, but a fact nevertheless, had actually offered me the World Heavyweight title to come back. I'm probably one of the only guys ever in history that turned him down, said no thank you, and turned down the World Heavyweight title. True story. Sat at his house in Charlotte, North Carolina as he made that offer to me, and just other priorities in my life. Having the World Heavyweight title around my waist wasn't a priority at that time.
Probably one of the biggest matches, in my opinion, in your career. In fact, it was voted Match of the Year by the readers of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Your tag team match against the Road Warriors. Can you
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what in your mind, was that one of your best matches? You know, if it was, can you talk a little bit about it and how you felt about it? If not, what would you consider one of your best matches, if not that?
You know, it's Kevin. It's hard to pinpoint a best match because I mean, 1985, I had 454 matches, for example, and so had a lot of matches over the course of my career against a lot of legendary guys in the business. You know, from Wahoo McDaniel to the famous Johnny Weaver in the Mid-Atlantic to of course Nature Boy Ric Flair to Jerry Lawler to Mark Callis, who went on to be The Undertaker, to Steve Austin, to Ravishing Rick Rude. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. You know, the Road Warriors are certainly a part of that. Magnum TA with the best of 7 series for the U.S. title. The War Games. I mean, oh my gosh, we had so many incredible matches. Certainly the matches against the Road Warriors pitted, you know, the epitome of evil against the muscle of America, if you will, and certainly led to some classic matches, chain matches and everything else. So I would say just even some of the names I mentioned and some of the matches I had with all of those guys, from what I understand from the fan base, they were well entertained and certainly speak highly of.
Awesome. Just one more question here real quick. Probably one of the nicest ongoing feuds that I've seen you engaged in over your career, especially towards the end of your career, was a series of matches both against Lex Luger, both as a babyface and heel, and also with Sting. Can you comment on those matches a little bit, and do you still talk with either Luger or Sting these days?
Yeah, I had a half-hour conversation with Lex just a few hours ago. He and I have become the best of friends. I've been actually mentoring and discipling him since he surrendered his heart to the Lord for the last 6+ years. I mean, we're together every week, all the time on the phone. If we're not together, usually once a quarter, I'm down at Sting's house, and you know, I've had the privilege of helping to mentor him in his walk with Christ, and so we've stayed well connected. That particular time in my career you're talking about was the time I came back from the sabbatical, and they were convinced they could turn me into a heel, a bad guy again. I tried to convince them otherwise, so they started me with Lex, and saw that 50% of the crowd was still cheering me. So then they thought, well, we'll put him with the top babyface, the top good guy, and Sting. And I had a few more naysayers, but nevertheless, they finally realized and concluded, you know what, you were right, this isn't going to work. And so I took another little short hiatus there to come back, make an appeal to Sting with actually what was my oldest daughter, Taryn, at the time on the TV set, with her face painted up, and made an appeal, an apology to him, and finished out my career on the good side of the fence, if you will. So great matches against both those guys. Incredible workers.
Well, you've had plenty of legendary matches in your career, Mr. Koloff, but you're going to form a whole new legend with the Preacher's Daughter's show on Lifetime. And before we wrap it up today, and you said that we might get a chance to talk again in the future, so we'll talk more about your career. But for now, we don't want to miss out on the opportunity to promote this show because it's a great show. It's a good value, and it's something that everybody can enjoy both as entertainment and as a life lesson as well. So tell everybody when they can check out The Preacher's Daughters on Lifetime.
It is on Tuesday nights at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, and we're excited about it already. Getting lots of conversation, dialogue about it. We appreciate you guys helping us to promote it. I'm trusting and believing it is going to impact a lot of lives in a positive way, in a very positive way. Now, you and I both know you can please some of the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. So I'm sure there'll be some banter and some rhetoric on the other side of it as well. But if the man that stopped me yesterday is any indication, and if it did nothing else, it has brought our family closer together and helped to bridge communication within our own family. And so I appreciate that. Yep, Preacher's Daughters, we believe is going to make a difference. And so thank you guys for helping us to promote it.